Hejin stood quietly at the back of the classroom, trying his best not to draw attention to himself. The tall human student kept his eyes down as Professor X moved through the room, his 6 legs making soft clicking sounds against the metal floor. The Galactic Academy of Leadership's main lecture hall was filled with students from across the galaxy, but Hejin was one of only 2 humans in the entire school. The morning light from the 3 suns streamed through the large windows, creating rainbow patterns as it passed through several crystalline students. Hejin watched as one of them, a senior named Kex, turned slightly to make the light dance across the ceiling. It was beautiful, but Hejin knew better than to smile or show any reaction. The last time he had displayed emotion in class, Professor X had spent 20 minutes explaining to everyone why humans were too primitive to control their facial expressions properly. Today, Professor X announced, his antenna twitching with what Hejin had learned was excitement. We will assign team leaders for the annual survival exercise on Nexus IV. The professor's outer eyes blinked in sequence while his main eyes stayed fixed on his datapad. As you know, this is a required course for all second-year students. Hejin felt his heart beat faster. He had been preparing for this exercise all year. Back on Earth, his family had taught him outdoor survival skills since he was young. Those skills had helped him earn his place at the academy, even though many thought humans were too dangerous to be allowed in. Professor X continued, Nexus IV is a Class 1 training moon. Its environment is carefully controlled, its wildlife is docile, and its weather patterns are regulated. In other words, it is perfect for beginner survival training. He paused, all 4 eyes now focusing on Hejin. Perfect even for less advanced species. Several students turned to look at Hejin. He kept his face neutral, though inside he felt both angry and amused. The teachers never missed a chance to remind everyone that Earth was classified as a death world, a planet so dangerous that most galactic species considered it uninhabitable. The exercise will last 3 standard days, Professor X said. Each team will have 5 members with 1 designated leader. Teams must demonstrate basic survival skills, including shelter building, water collection, and safe food gathering. The professor's antenna twitched again. Remember, this is a simple exercise. There is no need for primitive survival methods. All teams will be given standard survival equipment. Hejin thought about the basic stone knife he kept in his boot, a habit his grandmother had taught him. He wondered what the professor would consider primitive. The room's holographic display came to life, showing a list of teams. Hejin scanned for his name, expecting to be placed under one of the more experienced alien students. His eyes widened when he saw his position. Team Leader, Group 7. A wave of whispers swept through the room. Professor X's antenna went completely still, a sign of satisfaction. Yes, students, you are reading correctly. Hejin will lead Group 7. After all, we must give everyone a chance to prove themselves. Hejin understood immediately. This wasn't an opportunity. It was a trap. The professors expected him to fail, to prove their beliefs about humans being unfit for leadership positions in the galaxy. The holographic display updated to show his team members. His heart lifted slightly when he saw Jai-Yun's name, the other human student at the academy. She was training in xenomedicine, learning to adapt human medical knowledge to help alien species. The rest of his team made him raise an eyebrow. Kex, the crystalline senior he had noticed earlier. Lux, an aquatic species student who needed a special suit to survive in air. And Mex, an energy-based life form who had to use a physical containment body to interact with solid matter. It was clear why he had been assigned these specific team members. Each one had special needs that would make survival challenges more difficult. The professors had given him the most complicated team possible. Team leaders, please stand, Professor X commanded. Hejin rose slowly, along with 9 other students. You will have 2 hours to meet with your teams and prepare your strategies. Remember, this is a supervised exercise. There is no real danger on Nexus IV. Even the most primitive species should be able to handle it safely. As the class ended, Hu Jin waited for his team members to approach. Jia Yun reached him first, her medical kit already slung over her shoulder. She gave him a small nod. Humans had learned to be careful about showing too much friendship in public at the academy. Leader He Jin, Kex said formally, crystal body chiming softly as he moved. I must inform you that I cannot be exposed to acid rain. It damages my outer layers. I require water immersion every 6 hours. Lux bubbled through her environmental suit speakers. My suit can recycle water, but not indefinitely. Mex's containment body hummed as they approached. This physical form has limited power. I must return to energy state for at least 2 hours per day cycle. He Jin listened to each of them list their limitations. He could see other team leaders across the room, getting excited descriptions of their team members' abilities. But he didn't mind. On Earth, his grandmother had taught him that understanding limitations was more important than knowing strengths. Thank you for telling me these things, he said carefully, using the formal language they had been taught. Please, let us find a private room to discuss our strategy. They found an empty study room, and Hu Jin closed the door. As soon as they were alone, Jia Yun's professional manner dropped slightly. They're setting you up to fail, she said in Korean, their native language a secret comfort in the academy. Hu Jin nodded, then addressed the whole team. Yes, they are. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that we're a team now, and we're going to work together to complete this exercise successfully. But how? Lux's suit bubbled anxiously. We all have serious limitations. The professors clearly expect us to fail. He Jin smiled slightly, thinking of all the camping trips with his family, all the survival lessons his grandmother had taught him. On Earth, we have a saying, the best survival tool is the one between your ears. It means that thinking and planning are more important than any equipment. He pulled out his datapad and brought up the map of their assigned area on Nexus IV. Let's start by understanding our challenges. Kex, you're worried about acid rain. Jia Yun, can your medical sensors detect Fey levels in the air? Jia Yun nodded, already seeing where he was going with this. Yes, and I can rig an early warning system for atmospheric acid levels. Good. Lux, your need for water immersion is actually an advantage. It means you'll be excellent at finding water sources. Mex, your energy form, can you sense electrical fields? Yes. Mex hummed. It is how I navigate when not in physical form. Perfect. You can help us detect incoming weather patterns and find safe paths through the training grounds. He Jin looked at each team member. Everyone's limitations come with hidden advantages. We just have to think differently about how to use them. The team spent the next hour discussing strategies. He Jin listened more than he spoke, asking questions and helping his team members see how their different abilities could work together. By the end of their planning session, even Kex's crystal form seemed to shine a bit brighter with growing confidence. As they left the study room, they passed Professor X in the hallway. The professor's antenna twitched as he watched them, clearly expecting to see signs of discord or failure already. Instead, he saw a unified team, walking together with purpose. He Jin kept his face carefully neutral as they passed the professor, but inside he was smiling. His grandmother had taught him another saying, the best revenge is success. He intended to show the academy exactly what a human leader could do, not through strength or advanced technology, but through the skills that had kept humanity alive on their dangerous homeworld for thousands of years. Back in his small dormitory room that evening, He Jin packed his bag for the exercise. The academy provided standard survival gear. Emergency shelters, water purifiers, food synthesizers, and communication devices. He added his stone knife, carefully wrapped in cloth. It wasn't technically against the rules. They hadn't forbidden personal items, probably because they never imagined anyone would bring something so primitive. As he finished packing, His room's communication panel lit up with a message from Jai-yun. Team meeting at sunrise. We'll show them what Deathworlders can do. He-jin sent back a simple acknowledgement, then lay down on his bed, looking out his window at the unfamiliar stars. Tomorrow would be the beginning of their survival exercise, and he was determined to prove that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. The Academy might see humans as primitive Deathworlders, but He-jin knew better. They were survivors, adaptable and resourceful, and those qualities were about to become their greatest strengths. As he drifted off to sleep, He-jin thought about his grandmother's last words to him before he left Earth for the Academy. Remember, child, the most dangerous thing in any survival situation is thinking you know everything. Stay humble, stay alert, and remember, there's always something new to learn, even in the oldest ways of doing things. Tomorrow, he would begin teaching his team those old ways, and maybe, just maybe, they would all learn. The morning of the survival exercise arrived with all three suns of the galaxy's educational sector rising in sequence. He-jin stood at the Academy's transport bay, watching his team members arrive one by one. The massive room hummed with the sound of ships being prepared for their journey to Nexus IV. Jai-yun arrived first, her medical kit now expanded to include several devices she had modified overnight. I tested the pH sensors, she said quietly in Korean. They can detect acid levels from 3 kilometers away. She switched back to standard galactic, adding, "Good morning, team leader," as other students entered the bay. Kex arrived next, crystal form catching the morning light. Today, the crystalline being had adjusted their outer layers to be more durable, appearing slightly cloudy instead of perfectly clear. I have studied the standard equipment list. Kex chimed softly. There are no protective covers included. They assumed no one would need protection from acid rain in a simple exercise. Don't worry, He-jin said. We have a plan for that. He looked up as Lux approached, her environmental suit humming quietly. The aquatic being had added extra water tanks to her suit, the clear liquid swirling with hints of her natural bioluminescence. Mechs arrived last, their containment body moving with precise steps. The transport ships are being prepared, they hummed. Professor X is supervising the loading of supplies. He-jin gathered his team in a quiet corner of the bay. Before we board, let's review our plan. Remember, they expect us to use only the standard equipment. They expect us to fail. He pulled out his datapad, showing a map of their assigned landing zone. But we're going to do this our way. Professor X's voice echoed through the transport bay. All teams, prepare for boarding. Remember, this is a supervised exercise on a safe, controlled moon. There is no need for excessive preparation. His 4 eyes fixed briefly on He-jin's team before moving on. As they walked to their assigned transport, He-jin noticed the other teams chatting excitedly about the high-tech survival gear they'd been issued. His own team moved quietly, each member focused on their role in the plan they'd developed. Their transport was smaller than the others, another subtle message from the Academy about their expected performance. He-jin helped each team member board, paying special attention to Lux's water suit and Mex's containment body. They would need both functioning perfectly for what he had planned. Once they were seated, He-jin began his final briefing. The Academy thinks this exercise is about using their advanced technology to survive. But real survival isn't about having the best equipment. It's about understanding your environment and working together. But how can we compete with the other teams? Lux bubbled anxiously. They all have standard survival training. She paused, searching for a polite word. Different. He-jin finished for her. Yes, we are. And that's our strength. He looked at each team member. Kex, your crystalline form can refract light. In an emergency, you could signal for help across great distances. Kex's form brightened slightly. I had not considered that use of my structure. Lux, your need for water makes you naturally skilled at finding it. You can sense water sources that others might miss. He-jin turned to Mex. And your ability to switch between energy and physical form means you can scout ahead safely, warning us of dangers. What about me? Jai-yun asked, though her slight smile showed she already knew. You're our medical expert, but more than that, you understand how different species react to environmental changes. That knowledge will help us adapt to whatever challenges we face. The transport ship rumbled to life, lifting off from the Academy's docking bay. Through the viewport, He-jin watched other ships taking off, carrying teams that were probably already plotting their first moves with their advanced gear. I know the professors think humans are primitive, He-jin continued. They see our planet as a dangerous backwater that somehow produced a species too stubborn to die. But they don't understand what that means. He pulled out his stone knife, showing it to the team. On Earth, we learned that the simplest solutions are often the most reliable. Keck studied the knife with interest. That is not standard equipment. No, He-jin agreed. It's much older. My grandmother made it the traditional way, knapping the stone to create a sharp edge. She taught me that you never know when you might need to make one yourself. But we have molecular cutters in our supply kit, Mex hummed curiously. Yes, and what happens when they run out of power? He-jin asked. A stone knife never needs charging. It can't break down or malfunction. Sometimes, the old ways are the best ways. The transport ship entered Nexus Ivy's atmosphere, descending toward their assigned landing zone. Through the viewport, they could see the moon's surface, rolling hills covered in blue-tinted vegetation, streams cutting through valleys, and scattered copses of tree-like plants. It looks peaceful, Lux observed. Everything looks peaceful from a distance, He-jin said. But remember what we discussed. The Academy calls this a simple exercise because they control the environment. But control doesn't always mean safe. The ship touched down in a small clearing. As the team prepared to disembark, He-jin gave them each a small pouch he had prepared the night before. Inside, they found simple tools made from materials he had collected around the Academy. Twine made from plant fibers, small flint stones for sparking fires, and strips of processed protein bars wrapped in waterproof material. These are backup supplies, he explained. Keep them hidden. Use the standard equipment when the professors are watching, but keep these ready just in case. You really think we'll need them? Kex asked, carefully storing the pouch in a crystalline compartment. I hope not, He-jin said. But my grandmother taught me another saying. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. On Earth, that's not just advice, it's how we survive. They stepped out onto the surface of Nexus IV, the three suns creating complex shadows through the alien vegetation. The air was thick but breathable, heavy with the scent of unfamiliar plants. Their landing zone was at the edge of a forest, with a stream visible about half a kilometer away. Remember, He-jin said as they gathered their equipment, we're not here to prove we're better than the other teams. We're here to show that different isn't the same as primitive. Every one of us has something valuable to contribute. He watched as his team began setting up their base camp, each member working to their strengths. Lux moved toward the stream, her natural affinity for water helping her test its safety. Kex positioned themselves to create a network of light signals that could warn of approaching acid rain. Mex's containment body hummed as they prepared to shift to energy form for their first scouting run. Jai-yun set up her medical station, modified to monitor not just their health but the environment itself. Looking at them, He-jin felt a surge of pride. The Academy had given him this team thinking their differences would guarantee failure. Instead, those very differences might be exactly what they needed to succeed. In the distance, he could see other teams setting up their high-tech camps, their standard equipment gleaming in the sunlight. His own team's camp would look simple in comparison, but He-jin knew better than to judge by appearances. After all, humanity hadn't survived on Earth by having the fanciest tools. They had survived by learning to use whatever they had available, and by working together despite their differences. As the three suns continued their complex dance overhead, He began teaching his team the survival skills that had kept humanity alive on their dangerous homeworld. The Academy might call Earth a death world, but to He, that just meant his people had learned lessons that the rest of the galaxy had never needed to learn. And over the next 3 days, he had a feeling those lessons were going to prove more valuable than any piece of standard equipment the Academy could provide. The first day on Nexus IV had gone smoothly. Perhaps too smoothly, He thought as he watched the third sun set. Their camp was simple but effective, with each team member contributing their unique abilities. Lux had found them a clean water source. Kex's crystal form provided excellent visibility in the dark, and Mex's energy form had mapped the surrounding area. Jaehyun approached him as the last light faded. "The other teams are struggling," she said quietly in Korean. "They're relying too much on their equipment. 3 teams have already reported power failures." He nodded, watching the distant flickers of electric lights from other camps. His team used no powered lights. Instead, Kex's natural bioluminescence and Lux's water suit provided all the light they needed. The first sign of trouble came just before midnight. Mex, who had been floating above their camp in energy form, suddenly materialized in their containment body. "Something is wrong," they hummed urgently. "The moon's magnetic field is fluctuating." Before He could respond, Jaehyun's modified medical scanner began beeping rapidly. "Atmospheric pressure is dropping," she reported. "This isn't in the exercise parameters." He looked up at the night sky. The stars were disappearing one by one behind rapidly forming clouds. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. "When animals go quiet and the stars vanish, find shelter immediately." "Everyone, pack essential gear now," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Kex, can you sense any vibrations through the ground?" "The crystalline being pressed closer to the earth." "Yes, strong ones. Getting stronger." "Mex, scout up again. What do you see?" The energy being left their containment body, rising high above the camp. They returned seconds later, their voice filled with static. "Objects entering the atmosphere. Many objects. They appear to be meteors." He-jin's mind raced. The Academy had chosen Nexus IV because it was safe, predictable. But he remembered reading that many safe moons had become that way through artificial means. If those systems failed, a loud alarm blared across the valley, followed by Professor X's voice. "Attention all teams. We are experiencing unexpected technical difficulties with the moon's defense systems. Please remain calm and..." The transmission cut off with a burst of static. "He-jin," Jaehyun called out, pointing to the horizon. The clouds had taken on an ominous green color, and flashes of lightning revealed shapes falling from the sky. "Caves," He-jin said immediately. "Mex, did you see any caves during your scouting?" "Yes, 2 kilometers south. But the other teams..." "We'll need help," He-jin finished. "Okay, listen carefully. This is no longer an exercise. Kex, use your crystal form to signal the other teams. Flash a directional pattern toward the caves." As Kex began to shine brightly, He-jin turned to Lux. "The atmospheric changes will bring rain. Probably acid rain, given the color of those clouds. Can your suit's sensors help guide us to the caves?" Lux's suit bubbled with nervous energy. "Yes, but I need to stay submerged soon." "The caves will likely have underground water sources," Jaehyun said, already packing her medical supplies. "If not, we can create a pool using the waterproof tarps from our standard equipment." The first meteor struck 2 kilometers away, the impact sending tremors through the ground. He-jin saw panic breaking out in the distant camps as teams of aliens struggled with malfunctioning equipment. "Change of plans," he announced. "We're not going straight to the caves. We're going to help the other teams." He saw his team's surprised expressions. "On Earth, we learned that survival isn't just about keeping yourself alive. It's about keeping your community alive." They moved quickly through the darkness, with Kex providing light and Mex scouting ahead in energy form. They reached the nearest team just as their power grid failed completely. "Your equipment won't work," Heijin told the panicked aliens. "The meteor shower is causing electromagnetic interference. Follow us. We know a safe place." 2 more teams joined them as they made their way south. Heijin assigned his team members to help different groups. Lux helped another aquatic species student whose suit was failing. Kex provided crystalline light to guide the way. Jaiyun moved between groups, treating injuries from the panic. The meteor impacts grew closer. The ground shook constantly now, and the green clouds began to release their first drops of rain. Where the drops hit, plants sizzled and smoked. "Acid rain," Kex confirmed, their crystal form already showing signs of wear. Phage level dangerous to most life forms. Heijin pulled out the waterproof tarps he had packed. "Everyone, cover yourselves. Move in groups of 4 under each tarp. Kex, get under cover now." They were 1 kilometer from the caves when the first predator appeared. The creature burst from the underbrush, its 6 legs carrying it rapidly toward the group. It was clearly panicked by the meteors, its natural hunting instincts overridden by fear. The other team's defense weapons wouldn't power on, but Heijin had his stone knife. He stepped forward, positioning himself between the creature and the group. The predator charge. Heijin waited until the last moment, then dropped and rolled, using the creature's momentum against it. His knife found a weak spot in its armor, and the creature fled back into the darkness. "How did you do that without powered weapons?" one of the alien students asked. "Sometimes the old ways are the most reliable," Heijin answered, already moving the group forward again. "Keep moving. The caves are close." They reached the caves just as the meteor shower reached its peak. The ground shook violently, and the acid rain fell in sheets. But the caves were deep and dry, with an underground stream just as Jaiyun had predicted. Heijin organized the groups quickly, setting up shelter areas and water collection points. His team moved with practiced efficiency, using the skills they had learned over the past day instead of relying on their faltering equipment. "The Academy's systems are completely down," Mex reported after another scouting trip. "The moon's defensive shields have failed. The professors are attempting emergency repairs from orbit." Heijin looked at the gathered students, representing nearly every known species in the galaxy. They were scared, but they were alive. His team's primitive survival skills had saved them all. As if reading his thoughts, Jaiyun spoke softly in Korean. "Not bad for a bunch of Deathworlders." "Right." Heijin allowed himself a small smile. "The crisis isn't over," he said, switching back to standard galactic. "But we'll survive it. Together." He pulled out his backup supplies, the simple tools he had prepared. "Now let me show you all how we survive on Earth when the power goes out." The meteors continued to fall outside, and the acid rain burned the landscape. But in the caves, guided by the skills that had kept humanity alive on their dangerous homeworld, a group of diverse aliens began to learn that sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones. And somewhere up in orbit, Heijin knew Professor X was watching, finally understanding why humans had survived on their death world for so long. Inside the cave system, Heijin worked steadily to organize their growing group of survivors. The sound of meteors striking the surface echoed through the rock, but the thick cave walls kept them safe. More teams had found their way to the shelter, guided by Kex's crystal signals. "The acid rain is getting stronger," Jaiyun reported, checking her modified sensors. "The phage levels are now dangerous even to protected equipment. 3 more environmental suits have failed in the last hour." Heijin nodded, looking at the gathered students. Many of their high-tech survival tools had stopped working, leaving them scared and uncertain. He gathered everyone around the central cave chamber, where Kex's natural light created a gentle glow. "I know you're all worried," Heijin began, speaking clearly in standard galactic. "But we have everything we need to survive this crisis. We just need to work together and use what we have." He pulled out his simple tools and laid them on a flat rock. These are what humans used before we had advanced technology. They still work just as well today. He picked up the stone knife. This can cut cordage, prepare food, and create other tools. It never needs charging. The alien students watched with growing interest as He-Jin demonstrated basic survival techniques. He showed them how to test air currents to find fresh air sources, how to identify safe drinking water, and how to create simple but effective tools from available materials. Lux, who had found a deep pool in the cave system for her water needs, helped other aquatic species students create safe water storage using the waterproof tarps. He-Jin taught me that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. She explained, her suit's speakers carrying clearly through the cave. Mechs continued to scout in energy form, moving through the rock itself to map the cave system. They discovered several chambers that could serve as separate living spaces, allowing different species to create environments that suited their needs. The electromagnetic interference is affecting my containment body, Mechs reported after one scouting trip. But in energy form, I can still move freely. The old ways, as He-Jin says, are proving more reliable. Jai-Yun had set up a medical station near the cave entrance. She combined her advanced medical knowledge with basic first aid techniques, teaching others how to care for different species without relying on powered equipment. On Earth, she explained while treating a crystalline student's acid rain damage, we learned to heal long before we had modern medicine. Those skills are still valuable today. She used a mixture of cave minerals and filtered water to create a protective coating for damaged crystal formations. As the crisis continued, the cave became more organized. He-Jin assigned tasks based on natural abilities rather than technological advantages. The crystalline students, following Kex's example, provided light. The aquatic species monitored water quality. Energy beings like mechs helped maintain communication between different chambers of the cave system. Watch the air currents. He-Jin taught them, standing near the cave entrance. If they change suddenly, it might mean a new meteor impact is coming. Our bodies can sense these changes better than many instruments. A group of students gathered around him, asking questions about Earth survival techniques. One of them, a gravitational species student whose gravity control suit had failed, spoke up. Why do humans know so much about surviving without technology? He-Jin thought about his grandmother's lessons as he answered. On Earth, we learned early that we couldn't always control our environment. Instead, we learned to adapt to it. Every disaster taught us new ways to survive. In the deeper parts of the cave, Jai-Yun organized teams to gather safe food sources. She taught them how to identify edible cave fungi and how to purify water using layers of sand and charcoal from their emergency fires. These techniques are thousands of years old, she explained while demonstrating water filtration. But they still work perfectly. Sometimes the old solutions are the most reliable ones. The cave's population continued to grow as more teams found their way to safety. Each new arrival brought stories of failed equipment and dangerous conditions on the surface. But inside the cave, under He-Jin's guidance, they were building a functional community. Your crystal form is perfect for this, He-Jin told Kex, helping them position themselves to create a complex light network through the cave system. You're not just providing light. You're helping create a communication system. Kex's crystal surface brightened with pride. I never thought my natural form would be more useful than artificial lights. The Academy always emphasized technological solutions. Technology is useful, He-Jin agreed, but it's not the only answer. Humans learn that every ability, every difference, can become an advantage if you think about it the right way. As the second day of the crisis continued, the cave system became more organized. They had created separate areas for sleeping, food preparation, water collection, and medical care. Everything ran on natural abilities and simple tools, proving more reliable than the failing high-tech equipment. The acid rain has created rivers of corrosive liquid on the surface, Mex reported after another scouting trip. But the cave system is protecting us perfectly. The natural rock formation is more resistant than any artificial shelter would have been. In the medical area, Jia Yun had trained several students from different species to serve as basic medical assistants. They learned to recognize signs of distress in different species and how to provide emergency care without powered equipment. Humans had to learn about healing before we had scanners and automated treatments, she explained while teaching a respiratory technique to help a struggling atmospheric species student. Our bodies have natural warning signs. We just need to learn to recognize them. The crisis had transformed their survival exercise into a real test of adaptation and resilience. But instead of failing, as the academy professors had expected, He Jin's team was thriving. Their primitive human approaches to survival were proving more reliable than any advanced technology. "I think I understand now," Lux said during a quiet moment, her suit's speakers soft in the cave's darkness. "The academy called Earth a death world because it's dangerous. But that danger made humans stronger. It taught you to survive in ways we never had to learn." He Jin nodded, watching the cave community work together. Different species using their natural abilities, helping each other without relying on technology. It was exactly what humanity had done throughout its history, adapting, surviving, and turning challenges into advantages. "On Earth," he said, "we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Sometimes having less forces you to become more." He looked at his team members, each now teaching others their specialized skills. The academy thought our human ways were primitive, but being primitive just means we know how to survive when everything else fails. Outside, the meteor shower continued to batter the moon's surface. But inside the caves, guided by human survival knowledge and working together across species boundaries, they had created something remarkable. A community that could survive any crisis, not through advanced technology, but through cooperation, adaptation, and the simple wisdom that had kept humanity alive on their dangerous homeworld for countless generations. The third day of the crisis brought new challenges. The meteor shower had finally stopped, but the moon's surface remained dangerous. Acid rain had created rivers of corrosive liquid, and many of the native predators had been driven from their territories, making them more aggressive than ever. In the command ship orbiting Nexus IV, Professor X watched the surveillance feeds with all four eyes wide open. His antenna had been completely still for hours, a sign of deep shock. The other teachers gathered around him, watching as He Jin's cave community not only survived but thrived. "Impossible," one of the teachers whispered. "They're using no powered equipment at all." Back in the caves, He Jin gathered his original team for a meeting. "The acid rain is starting to seep into some of the upper chambers," he said. "We need to move everyone deeper into the cave system." Jia Yun checked her modified sensors, now powered by a simple chemical reaction she had devised using cave minerals. "The lower chambers are stable, but moving everyone will be difficult. Some species can't handle the deeper environments. Then we'll adapt the environment to them," He Jin said firmly. He looked at his team. "Each of you has learned to use your natural abilities in new ways. Now we need to teach others to do the same." Kex's crystal form glowed steadily as they spoke. "I have been teaching other crystalline beings how to adjust their structures. We can create natural support columns to strengthen the deeper chambers." "My water suit is running on manual systems now," Lux added, her suit bubbling quietly. "I've shown other aquatic species how to do the same. We can help maintain water quality without power." Mechs hummed from their containment body. "The energy beings have learned to move through rocks safely. We can scout all chambers simultaneously now." He Jin nodded, feeling proud of how far they had come. What had started as a simple survival exercise had become something much more important, a lesson in working together across species boundaries. A sudden rumble shook the cave system. Small rocks fell from the ceiling as everyone braced themselves. Jia Yun's sensors beeped urgently. "Surface temperature is rising rapidly," she reported. "The acid rain is reacting with the meteor debris. We need to move everyone now." He Jin took charge immediately. "Kex, Gather the crystal beings. Strengthen the main passages as we move. Lux, we'll need your water sense to find safe paths. Mechs, scout ahead and mark the safest routes. The evacuation began smoothly, with different species helping each other. Crystal beings created support structures, aquatic species tested water safety, and energy beings scouted the way. Humans weren't the only ones who had learned to adapt. Every species had found new ways to use their natural abilities. In orbit, Professor X made a decision. He pressed the emergency broadcast button, connecting to all communication devices that still worked in the caves. Attention all students, his voice echoed through the cave system. The Academy rescue ships are unable to land due to surface conditions. He paused, his antenna twitching with what seemed like embarrassment. We need your help. He-Jin gathered everyone in the main chamber. The Academy's technology can't handle these conditions, he explained. But we can. We've learned to work together without relying on powered equipment. Now we can use those skills to help create safe landing zones. The rescue plan came together quickly. Crystal beings positioned themselves along the cliffs, using their natural light abilities to guide ships. Aquatic species used their water sense to identify safe landing areas free from acid pools. Energy beings scouted for dangerous debris, while atmospheric species monitored wind conditions. Jai-Yun organized medical teams, preparing to receive injured students from other areas. Remember what we learned, she told her helpers. Trust your senses first, then use what tools you have. Simple solutions are often the best ones. The first rescue ship landed successfully, guided by the combined efforts of multiple species working together. As students began boarding the ships, Professor X's voice came through again. Team leader He-Jin, he said, all formality gone from his voice. The Academy, I owe you and your team an apology. We thought your human methods were primitive. We were wrong. He-Jin looked at his team, Kex glowing proudly, Lux's suit operating perfectly on manual systems, mechs smoothly switching between energy and physical form, and Jai-Yun teaching others until the very end. Professor, he replied, there's no such thing as primitive survival skills. There are only skills that work and skills that don't. Humans learned that the hard way on Earth. Now we all know it. The evacuation continued through the day. Every student who had entered the cave survived, thanks to the combination of different species' abilities and the simple but effective techniques He-Jin's team had taught them. As they boarded the final rescue ship, He-Jin took one last look at the cave system that had become their home for 3 remarkable days. The Academy had meant this exercise to prove that humans were too primitive to lead. Instead, it had proved that sometimes the oldest solutions were the most reliable ones. Back at the Academy a week later, Professor X stood before the assembled students. His antenna moved in complex patterns that indicated deep respect, something no one had ever seen him show to a human before. The survival exercise, he announced, was meant to test leadership and adaptation in controlled conditions. Instead, it became a real crisis. And in that crisis, we learned something valuable. He turned all 4 eyes to He-Jin's team. We learned that true survival doesn't depend on technological advancement. It depends on understanding, adaptation, and working together. The Academy's scoring system had to be completely revised. There was no category for surviving an actual disaster or teaching other species to thrive without technology. In the end, they simply created a new category: excellence in innovative survival techniques. He-Jin's team received the highest score in Academy history, but more importantly, they had changed how the galaxy viewed human abilities. Being from a death world wasn't a disadvantage, it was a source of invaluable survival knowledge. As He-Jin packed his things that evening, he found a small package on his desk. Inside was a stone knife, beautifully crafted in the traditional Earth style, with a note from Professor X. Sometimes the oldest tools are the best ones. Thank you for teaching us that wisdom. Jai-Yun found him looking at the knife, smiling. You know, she said in Korean, I think we just changed the meaning of primitive in the Galactic Dictionary. Maybe, Ho Jin replied, carefully wrapping the knife in cloth just as his grandmother had taught him. Or maybe we just reminded everyone that survival isn't about having the best technology. It's about working together and using whatever you have available. Outside his window, the three suns set in sequence, their light reflecting off Kex's crystal form as they walked across the academy grounds. Lux's water suit bubbled quietly as she helped maintain the academy's aquatic habitats, while Mex's energy form danced through the air, helping to repair the school's communication systems. The academy had wanted to prove that humans were too primitive to lead. Instead, they had proved that being primitive just meant knowing how to survive when everything else failed. And in the end, that was the most advanced skill of all.